Thank you.
So, okay, seconded by Senator, anybody? I'll second it, okay, for discussion purposes. So there's an amendment that was brought forward, and as you can see on page 1, there's the first section that is struck out. On line 5 to line 30, the department helped me with this, and I want to thank the department. Somebody from the department. Yes, if you don't mind, Josh.
Which bill are you on? I'm sorry.
257?
There's no FN on this, right?
No, we'll do the FN, the next FN after this one.
So, well, let's see who's here to talk to. The union folks aren't here to talk to this.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's listed as an FN.
That's what I thought, that's why it was the first one. But
Yeah.
It's,
it doesn't have FN on it, written on it, but
There is a fiscal note attached to it. It doesn't say FN on the top, but we had to write the fiscal note on this one.
so Josh, thank you, if you want to help us walk through an amendment to it.
Sure. Thank you. For the record, Josh Elliott, Director of the Division of Policy and Programs, Department of Energy. So we're looking at House Bill 257 as amended by the House. This is a suggestion if the committee wanted to move forward with something on this carrier of last resort issue. This is just a suggestion of how you could move forward. It's not, the department's not saying, yes, do this or don't do this. This is just, if there is a desire to move forward, this is an approach that I think would address some of the concerns. So if you're starting on page 1, to the end of line 5 is retained, and then following line, starting on line 6, all the way through to line 30, with the, I should say, all the way to line 29, excuse me, is struck out. And then on line 30, the small section, just the letter C in the parentheses is struck out, so that the sentence would read, starting on line 3, an incumbent telephone utility may petition the Department of Energy to be relieved of its carrier of last resort obligation in one or more municipalities, period. The Commissioner of the Department of Energy shall approve the petition if the Department of Energy finds that, skip all the way down to line 30, a provider or multiple providers other than the incumbent telephone utility have received municipal, state, or federal funding to serve an entire town or municipality, etc. Continuing through with the existing language to the end of line 2, and then adding comma, and will be complete in the next 9 months, period.
And the 911 issue is
Yes, so this is, if looking at the bill as originally passed by the House, subsection C, Roman 2, I should say Roman 2, subsection, excuse me, yes, Roman 2B, small parentheses C, starting on line 30, is only in the circumstance of where a provider or providers have received municipal, state, or federal funding to serve the entire town or municipality. So this would be 100% coverage of the community that's in question.
so feelings of the committee.
I'm
Yeah, I
trying
don't
to
have a
digest
question
this
for
really
Josh.
quickly. So, by striking out this language, unless they have 100% coverage, they can't.
Yes, so the only circumstance, I should have started with this rather than diving right into the language. The idea of this language would be such that if there is state, federal, municipal, state, or federal funding made available to a community to serve 100% of the community, only in that circumstance can the telephone utility be relieved of their carrier of last resort obligation. So this, rather than having to deal with the 95 or the 97%, it's just of if a town or community has gotten federal money, whether it's ARPA money, whatever it is, to serve 100% of the community, they're going to connect every single last households and business in that community. Only then can the incumbent carrier be relieved of their carrier of last resort obligation.
Senator Waters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But Josh, on page 3, you still have G. It says that if somebody isn't served, they can still be.
Yeah, so this is sort of a belt and suspenders approach, just to make sure if on the off chance that if there's somebody who doesn't, although, and I was going to say in that circumstance, I don't think there would be anybody who would actually, that would apply to anyone. If they're serving 100% of the community, there won't be anybody who doesn't have alternative service.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
since it's not an FN, I think that,
No, it isn't, I think.
oh. Excuse me. I guess the complicating factor is that we don't have Teresa Rosenberger here and we don't have Glenn Brackett here, who both are parties to this concern and wouldn't have known this was coming forward. So I just don't know how we should proceed. And I don't know what you think.
If there's something that we can probably, if we pass it with this amendment, we could do a floor amendment if necessary.
But it will go to finance?
Yes.
We can, I can ask, I
Yeah.
forgot you're on finance
Okay.
too. We can
Power
ask
play right
Jim to
here.
take it.
The only concern I have is when it gets to finance, unless we meet the technical question, we're only supposed to look at the financial aspect of this, not the policy portion. I mean, not that we can't, but we're not, that's kind of how we're supposed to look at it.
May I suggest this, that what we could do is that we could have an ought to pass motion.
Teresa?
We could
It's not Teresa.
we could amend it, okay? And then we could vote to retain. And if it looks like everybody's happy with it, when we get to the floor, we could take off, vote on to retain, and vote on to pass. And that gives us an escape hatch. But
That works.
I
So
mean,
we
it's a little complicated procedurally, but we could do that.
Yep, as long as we're all in agreement.
So we'd ought to pass with, as amended, and then we'd retain it in the committee and change the retain on the floor, overturn it.
Or
Right.
re-refer
If it came to the, if by Thursday, everybody is happy enough with it, then we can just get rid of the retain and pass it.
Or make any tweaks that we need to.
Or we could ask that it not be put on the calendar for Thursday.
It has to,
It
if
has
it's
to
an
be.
FN.
Oh, so it does
Yeah.
it. We'll just keep.
Unless you
Yeah,
want to come back.
don't
and
want
meet
it to have an
Thursday.
FN.
So,
The
that's,
other option is just to re-refer it to committee. I mean, is there a real burning desire to have this out right this minute?
It's an FN, so
Yeah, but I mean, we could re-refer and hold on to it and work on it later.
I mean, we could re-refer and then bring it to the floor on Thursday. And if by then everybody's fine with it, we can have this could be a floor amendment, and we could pass the bill.
Well, yeah, we can change on the floor, we can
Right.
change it from
Right.
refer to,
do you want to adopt this amendment first and then?
I think I'd be more comfortable the other way myself, re-refer and then adopt this to the floor amendment on, there'll be no objection if everybody's good with it. It'll go
yeah, actually, that makes more sense. So that,
It's a little less confusing.
yeah,
So
and
Marshall,
so
you good
that
with
the
that?
party, the stakeholders have a chance to look at it.
I just think that, I'd be more happy with that too.
Okay, so if you'll withdraw your ought to pass, I can offer re-refer.
All right.
I'll rescind my second.
Then, well, you or I can have to. I'll move re-refer.
Okay, so I'll second.
All in favor of re-refer?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And
And I want to thank Joshua. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help and your influence.
I'll take it.
And Teresa, do you have this amendment?
I need a little bit of time to digest this, I'm trying to figure out what to do.
And could you send a copy of it electronically to Glenn Brackett? Yep.
Nick, before you go, which the next, none of these are labeled FN. I assume,
You have a list of all the bills to executive.
where is it?
Yeah, we have 119 is an
What?
FN, 231, 257, 442.
All right, thank you.
119?
119?
All right, I think we have an amendment to that, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move out to pass on 119.
I'll second.
And I want to offer Senator Ennis's amendment 1481.
And I'll second.
Discussion on the amendment?
And you walk through us?
If you don't mind, I think, can we ask Kyle to come walk through this with us?
Kyle, would you care to? AKA Superman?
Superman?
Cameron's the new Superman, but he used to be
Oh,
Superman of HHS.
got it.
If
So-
he needed to get done, he could stop a train.
Good morning. So thank you for your consideration of this amendment. The amendment looks to add elk and red deer to the list of species that can be processed on farm for sale under certain labeling and tracing restrictions to allow for customers that choose to buy meat from a farm. Allows more options for farmers that don't have access to a USDA facility to process. A few years ago, we were able to work with Department of Agriculture and HHS on a bison program to allow bison to do it. We've continued to work with them on adding elk and red deer, which are two other farmed, which are considered non-amenable species under the Food Protection Act for the USDA, allowing them to be processed on the farm as well. So we've worked on this language with agriculture, Fish and Game, and HHS to get it to where it is today.
That's why I wanted Kyle to come. I couldn't think of the word non-amenable.
Further discussion? Any questions for?
Senator,
I have
Senator
some
Waters.
discussion,
Yep.
but thank you, Kyle. So, those who remember long, know that we had considerable debates over red deer about 14, 15 years ago in the House, because there's such extraordinary concern about chronic wasting disease coming into the state. And the red deer are known to be carriers of that. And if they're known to be carriers of that, and if we get chronic wasting disease in the deer population, forget about it. What is good about, what makes this bill possible, and I confirmed this with Scott Mason yesterday, was that this bill only is for deer that are already in herds in the state. So that the product of the deer that then are, who will be slaughtered are not, they will not be carriers, and they'll be certified because they're not coming from out of state. So, and, we have assurances that Fish and Game and Agriculture will monitor these herds, and that we can feel that this will be a safe practice for New Hampshire. So that I just wanted to give a little bit of that history, because this is, the chronic wasting disease is just the drop off the cliff moment for our deer population if it gets into it. So this gives us the protections we need.
I would concur, and I think that you've done a good job, and this bill will certainly help the farmers who do grow these species in New Hampshire. I will be supporting it.
Further discussion? All in favor of committee amendment 2023-1481S?
Aye.
aye,
Any against? Okay.
And I move on to pass as amended.
second,
Okay, all in discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none.
I'll take this one out too.
consent,
Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
Move consent.
Is there consent on this?
I move consent.
Second.
All in favor?
What?
Aye.
We do that with an iPad? That we could-
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
I think we can today. I don't think tomorrow we can. Because it's going to be on an addendum calendar. If not, they won't put it on.
Okay.
I think that was what Senator Bradley.
So all in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, Senator Pearl will
I'll
take
take
that up.
Mr. Chair, we need to redo 257 because Nick was not in the room. to get the vote. Oh, you were in there? You got it all squared? Oh, okay, never mind.
All right, so let's take up FN
Sorry.
442.
442, you have an amendment. The lobster bill.
40.
All right, is there a motion on the lobster bill?
I'm going to move on to pass.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
And I want to offer amendment 1715S.
Okay. Do we all have a copy of that?
You should have, it's on your desk.
Yeah.
442, yep. Okay, what does this amendment
Quick
do?
history, this bill has consumed about 40 to 60 hours of my life in the last month or so.
You've done a deep dive on it, haven't you?
More than I wanted. I've been able to claw my way out of the law.
Bring it on, I love it.
You can tell it's getting late in the session here. So I assembled a stakeholder meeting.
Yeah.
And with the governor's office, with a member of the lobster community, with Representative Hill, myself, and Colonel Jordan from Fish and Game. And we went through this and had a very lively discussion and spirited debate about diving for lobster and all of the topics that were in the original bill. There's a real interest from the governor's office about having some type of a cleanup program for derelict fishing gear, more so than above and beyond what currently is in place. The long and short of it is, I don't see a path forward right now for diving for lobster. We could not come to consensus that we could find a way to do that at this time. We did come to a general consensus that we would all support some type of a cleanup program. We came away from the meeting with slightly different ideas. I know in working with the lobster community, they were hopeful we didn't need any type of legislation to do it. But in talking with Fish and Game, they need some money in order to do some furtherance of a cleanup program. So the amendment that I'm presenting you, I can walk through it, or I gave it to y'all last week if you're all comfortable with what you've read. But essentially, in a nutshell, it will create a program and require them to host 3 cleanup sessions a year. I've proposed to give them $100,000 a year to do it. The ability for them to make the rules and put the program together however Fish and Game sees fit, with the understanding that I'd like them to bring the 2 communities together, meaning they're gonna need some diving community as well as some assistance from that, as well as some assistance from the lobstering community, and see if we can get some of this derelict gear off the bottom of the ocean that, you know.
We know it's there.
We've received evidence that there's some there. I've sunsetted the program in 2 years so that it's not an ongoing program, but it will continue for those 2 years. And my hope is at the end of that, we'll get a report back from, you know, the community, the Fish and Game and the lobster community and the divers, and that they've all gotten together and they realize they all can swim in the same pool, so to speak. But we'll see how that goes.
Is there a requirement in here for them to report back?
You know something, I don't remember if I put that in or not. I don't think I did. I don't know that we need to. I'm quite certain that we'll be able to have that communication without a legislative requirement.
Okay.
I'm
Underwater?
confident of that, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Senator, and, you know, I really appreciate your hard work on this and what promises to be a potentially helpful program. And while I really think the gear is a problem, on line 12, I'm not quite sure it's a sin. On line 12 on page 1, it's a problem, it may not be a sin.
It's not supposed to be, that's a typo, it's gear skin.
So
not
I'm
gear
sure we'll,
sin.
I'm sure we'll.
I did catch
we'll
that, I
correct
forgot
that.
about it.
But I wondered on the second page on your cutoff date,
Yeah,
I'm just wondering whether you should say 2026, because, I mean, I know it goes into the next fiscal year, but the fund is there, it's an unlapsing fund. And, you know, it might take, you know, I just don't, I mean, the funding is the funding, and if it's gonna be 3 events a year and so on, but I'm just wondering whether it'll really get going. I mean, this, you know, if it starts, the clock starts ticking this July 1st, and then will they actually be able to have an event this year, and then will they, maybe they'll have one next year, but I just thought I'd mention that maybe the 2 years is a little short of window.
well, thank you, Senator. In my conversations with Fish and Game, I didn't require them to do anything this year because I knew they couldn't
Yeah,
stand
right.
it up. So they've got 24 and 25 to do it.
Well,
So
only
that gets them
until
to 2 years.
June 30th and 25.
You know, something, I didn't catch that date. That's
So
not
maybe
what it's
December
supposed to be.
30th?
December 30th.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's a typo.
Yeah, I think that would, just plain makes sense. And just as an aside too, you know, we have some dive programs at the CTEs.
Does anyone have an
And,
extra pen?
I
seem
would
to have
think
left
there'd
mine
be,
on my desk.
I think might be a chance to, you know, connect with some of the CTEs in the coastal area. And I think there's actually one up in
CTE meaning?
the Korean Technical Ed. They have dive programs,
Mhm.
training, and there might be a possible connection that you can.
For cleanup, we'd probably have to eliminate the word fiscal, and for the year ending December 30th, or make fiscal calendar year? Because the fiscal year doesn't end December 30th.
Whatever you think is
I
best.
think we'd have to strike the word fiscal and make it calendar. And if that's not the correct terminology, I'm sure they'll clean it up.
And it's gonna go to finance, well, maybe it'll be waived, but,
So,
oh, you're gonna go to
I-
finance with it.
You
yeah,
got that?
it probably. Are you okay with that? So we'd change fiscal to calendar in June to December.
And we
Okay.
struck the S on
Yeah.
sin to in?
We gotta get rid of sin and make it years in rather than a year's worth of sin.
Further discussion? Senator Ralston?
Yes. So, I appreciate the amount of time that has gone into this, as I have also spent an inordinate amount of time.
I'm certain that you have.
Inordinate amount of time on this particular bill. And just as a recap, this bill was originally proposed as just a diving bill. And then the derelict gear was added in to push it over the finish line because it did not have widespread support. And the derelict gear bit, because it was added in, like the lobster industry strongly disagrees. And I would hazard to say that we don't have great data that says there is a pollution problem that is the fault of a lobsterman, which is what this does, is it changes the whole bill in order to just salvage something, and the something is the thing that was added on to save the scuba diving portion of it. And now puts not only a finding that the lobstermen are leaving gear left, right, and center, which we really have not done a thorough study if that is true, and also requires a 3-time-a-year cleanup, which,
If the funding is available. That is the one,
where's the if?
uh,
Because it's on line 19, the executive director shall schedule at least 3 events. So it's not may, it's
unless
shall,
funding is
is
insufficient to execute
such events
That's the out.
in 2025.
And the
So,
reason for that, if I can, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
please.
and I don't mean to. The reason I did that is because they really have no idea what this is gonna cost to put on an event. They have no idea. Fish and Game couldn't even give me
Colonel Jordan actually said it was 50,000.
he could, I
That's
asked,
what, I mean, that's
I don't know, I asked for a
multiple
number.
times had said, this costs $50,000 a year. And we need a significant amount of people power to make this
But
happen.
to put on the event that I talked, that this describes, he
Yeah.
didn't really give me a handle, and I said, well, then let's put in 3 and I'll give you $100,000 and you see what you can do, and they can also accept federal funding into the derelict fishing gear, which there may be some federal funding coming available through the recent action on the federal level.
And who's gonna have to go after that?
It's up to Fish and Game if they want it, but I've given them this to start with this season. My
So,
apologies, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no
I just
worries.
wanted to
The,
respond.
so there is also a concern that right now, the removal day that is already annual, that you all got a copy of this, because it was already scheduled, happens every year, had just happened on April 8th, requires a lot of planning, a lot of people, and they collect the debris and process it through recycling. So it's done in April because it's warm enough, not, you know, it's not great weather, but it's warm enough. And it's at the beginning of the beginning of the big season. So if there were to be possibly 3, even 2, what do you envision the second one being? Because it can't be during their fishing season. There's not time. There's nobody to do that. And it can't be done in the middle of winter. So who's going to do this and when? There's like real, like, these are the nitty gritty pieces that are not, you know, it's kind of like, hey, Fish and Game, do 3 if you can pay for it. But it's when you start drilling down to it, it's, you know, there is a specific reason why it's done at this particular time, and that they are addressing this issue that never was an issue until the scuba thing wasn't coming to fruition. So there is significant opposition to this happening from the lobster industry, who is already about to receive some new federal guidance, which we learned about from Senator Waters. Like, it's a very heavily regulated, very difficult and time-sensitive industry that this particular amendment, the piece in the original bill that now just pulls that specific piece out, really like hammers at them, and for what reason?
Senator Waters.
Yeah, and thank you, Senator Altshuler. You know, this has been complex. I do think that, you know, the current cleanup focuses on the beach, and it was a hard and long struggle to get the funding to create this fund and to increase fee and to get people to buy into the fee because they knew the purpose it was going to. I do think that it has been difficult for the submerged gear that is out, and there is gear out there, that it's been difficult for the Department of Fish and Game to be able to fund sufficient dive days to go out and get that. So you know, is there gears out there? Sure. And can some more of it be cleaned up? Sure. You know, it's, that's in a way what we'll find out, how much there really is to do out there if this program passes. But I have a suggestion that I think might address some of those concerns. I think the concern is that, you know, we worked so hard to get that fund, that are there sufficient guardrails around this, that for these additional events, that it will not cut into the funding in that fund that is from the fees, which is supports plus with the, what do they call it, gear to fuel program or whatever, I can't remember the name of it, but you know, the program they have to get those things recycled. So I wondered if what we could do, and I think it's your intent to say that this funding is meant to be an add-on, particularly for this.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we can do that. If we look at line 18 on page 1. So this is what I've come up with. Such events shall only, so insert the word there, only, be funded from the additional funding provided in section 3 in the derelict fishing gear and cleanup fund. So you see what that does?
Yep.
And that, I think Senator Altshuler, that in fact might, I mean, we can say it's a pilot program. It can be $100,000, they're gonna have some events. We'll see what they find out there, what can get cleaned up, and then we'll know. And if in the 2 years there's a good coordination that develops between the dive community and Fish and Game, so that it becomes systematized that, hey, we know some stuff has been marked out there, and now we can go get it. Maybe it'll work. I don't know.
I'm not certain either, but you understand, we'll get them all in working together, and I think they'll find that they can. I hope they'll find that they
You
can.
get all that, Nick?
So let me repeat it. And as this is a little on the fly, but such events.
Which line?
Okay, line 18, page 1. Such events shall only be funded from the additional funding provided in section 3, and I think it actually be to the derelict fishing gear and coastal cleanup fund. Okay, so it would, such events shall only be funded from the additional funding provided in section 3 to the derelict fishing gear and coastal cleanup fund.
I'm fine with that.
And I don't know, I mean, I think in some ways it may not really address your concerns about the history of it, Senator Altschuler, but at least it clarifies the intent here, and I would hope the fishing community, which is actually paying through increased fees for the derelict fishing gear fund, would see, okay, this is extra money, and if Senator Pearl can't wave his magic wand in the budget and get the funding, then it doesn't happen.
That is very true. I'll have to go and make my argument again.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
So
Good.
I see what you're doing. I understand the I want to be specific about my objection is the genesis of this, like how we got here and why. And I believe that, a compromise is when there was an issue to begin with. And it's hard to compromise when you are being accused of doing something that no one has proven you have done. And that is the position of the lobstering community, which is located in District 24. So that is, I'm not going to be able to support this because I don't support 422 and its genesis and its subsequent iterations. So I just want to be clear about why.
Just a quick
Yeah.
response, Senator. In no way am I making an accusation of anyone. There's photo evidence to show that there's some derelict gear there, and what my hope is that there's some good gear down there that these guys have lost, and I hope it helps them to get it back, and so that they can recover what they need to keep and continue on in doing their business. Because I come from a multi-generational family business, and I understand many of these do too, and I certainly support them, and I hope this helps them. That is my intent.
Senator Waters?
Oh, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I would like to comment on that we had testimony after testimony after testimony from the lobstermen that they're very conscientious about their gear, that they go looking for their lost gear. So if there is gear, we'll find out about it afterwards. But there was, what we got were pictures.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We don't know if it was from last year, if it was from 3 years ago. There are underwater pictures of something, and where did those come from? I don't know. And we didn't get corroboration from Fish and Game. They don't know either. And we heard from the lobsterman, I track my gear. So I want to be clear that the testimony we heard from the people who do this job are that they track their gear. Now, if there's somebody else who has licenses that is not tracking your gear, I guess we're going to find out with this.
Senator Waters?
So, again, a little more wordsmithing, okay? How about this? I mean, reading the language on lines to 11 to 14, I can see some heartburn there. So what if we did this, Senator Pearl? 11, starting on line 11. New Hampshire needs a rapid response to the call for a significant cleanup effort of all derelict fishing gear in our coastal waters.
Sure.
And that removes any kind of aspersions being cast.
From which to?
Years, yes. So striking which
It will
Through
take away
years.
the first part of sin.
and the first S of sin, all right? And then,
I'm fine with that.
and then what if we said a useful, and then I'm going on to line 13. A useful component to the cleanup effort is the addition of stakeholders to assist in the removal of the derelict fishing gear. A useful component to the cleanup effort is the addition of stakeholders to assist in removal of the derelict fishing gear.
Thoughts, concerns?
I mean, the easing restrictions, because this is not easing any restrictions in the bill per se, right? There's no restrictions being eased in it.
No, I think the thought process behind that, if I may respond, was that the divers can't go down currently and touch the traps. And
Yeah.
That's the restriction that
Yeah.
would be used by Fish and Game, saying, okay, today you can do this now and help in the recovery.
Well, but if I may, findings are session law, right?
Yeah,
So it's just, how are people gonna read it and how are they gonna feel about it?
I'm okay with that. I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm certainly
so
not trying to cast
I-
aspersions on
It
anyone.
would just kind of say, we kind of get it. And let's not blame restrictions which are jealously guarded by some folks, and rightfully so. But this is, I guess I'm just trying to, in Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, there's someone who, by the way, ends up in the mouth of hell called Mr. Smooth It Away. Okay, so I'm trying to be Mr. Smooth It Away, all right?
It's a good book.
It's a good book.
So you wanted to do a useful component to the cleanup effort
Is the addition of
the addition.
stakeholders to assist in removal of the derelict fishing gear.
Did Mr. Smooth It Away get rid of the word sin?
Yes,
He
they
did.
did.
There's no sin in the bill. I'm fine with that, Senator. I have no issue with that.
So, Nick, do you have all that too? Okay.
All right, with the amendments to the amendments, we all in favor of the changes?
I'm fine.
I am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
So,
I'll move on to pass as amended using
Second.
1715.
discussion? All in favor of the bill as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, Senator Pearl, you'll take this out?
Sure, I'll take the whole committee today.
Thank you. That's your amendment, thank you for the work that you did, and very admirable work. Yeoman's work, as Senator D'Alessandro would say, yeoman's work. I would like to do 139 right now, if that's all right.
Sure.
Do all the offense first? Or you-
I want to do it 139, I just want to get that, because that's
All right.
an important bill.
So I will move on to pass on 139.
We'll do the other two.
Yep.
Yeah, we're all set. So I'll second it.
And I'd like to introduce Amendment 1722S, which we all,
1722S, why don't I have that?
oh, wait a minute, it's a different one, I'm sorry. What's the
I
one,
got
what's
1830.
18, that's, I think, the one I want, I'm sorry.
1830.
Yeah, I want to introduce 1830S, please.
All right.
And I'll speak to that if it's seconded.
Yep,
If you need a second, I'll second it.
I seconded.
You did, okay, I'm sorry.
So, you recall, we passed the hydrogen bill unanimously, Senate Bill 167. And it went to the House, and this, it came out of the committee, ITL'd, and went to the House floor, but Representative Bowes had an amendment that he was willing to offer that he thought could get it over the finish line if the ITL was overturned. That failed by one vote. So subsequent discussions about the necessity of having the hydrogen bill produced this amendment. And really, there are just a couple of changes. You'll notice the word green has gone. And
The word green.
yeah, the word green has gone throughout, has left the bill throughout it. And that really is fine, because what is operant here on page 3 is the definition of hydrogen. Essentially identifies it as hydrogen produced by non-carbon sources, and that is referencing the section of 262H4, which is the clean energy section that we already have, which is where it belongs. So keeping this in there as a definition means that we have created the conditions for us to compete for the tens of billions of dollars of federal funding. Then there's one small provision that had been in the bill as do it now, but now will be one of the things that's studied in the study committee, and that's fine. And then the Department of Energy wanted us to take out the PUC member of the advisory committee and replace that with the Commissioner of Department of Transportation. That's what Chris Elms wanted. We have, I have had conversations with Representatives Bose and McGee, and they believe that they will move that we concur, that the House concurs with this version of it. So that's the history of it. I think we're going to end up in a good place and be very helpful to New Hampshire folks to be able to develop this new technology and potentially get substantial federal funding for it. So the position of the Senate already was to pass it. I think it's been much improved by the House's suggestions, and that's why we're replacing 139 with this, because the substance of 139 is now in 281. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Further discussion? All in favor of the committee amendment, or the amendment?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none?
I'm about to pass as amended.
Second?
Second by Senator Pearl. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll move consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Pearl. All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, Senator Waters will take that one out.
Hey,
Thank you.
Take that one out.
Thank you, colleagues.
All right, let's do 576 FNAL. Is there a motion on 576?
There's no amendment on that, correct?
No.
I'll move out to pass.
And I will second.
Further discussion? All in favor of 576
Aye.
as is?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'll move consent.
Second.
All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Senator Altshuler, would
Aye.
you like to take this out?
Sure.
Okay. All right, my other.
Did we
31?
just,
Is
we
your
just
last
put on
FM?
consent, yeah?
Yes.
Did I hear that?
Yeah, and you're
Okay.
taking it out.
Yep, got it.
So-
Oh, wait, excuse me.
Oh, wait, Chairman?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
Looking at my notes, so was there anything that they were going to add to
No,
it?
they.
They said no?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we already voted
That
anyways.
would- that would
but-
hurt- that would hurt it anyway.
Okay, good. I just- I thought we were
So,
good. Okay.
257,
You don't want to do 231?
eventually.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, we did. Oh, that's right. I checked, you know what? I checked 231 instead of 257. So now I'm gonna check 257, and I'm gonna offer 231.
I'm going to move ITL.
On 231?
Yes.
231, hold up,
The
hold
default?
up. We wanna talk to-
Senator
what?
Pearl. Okay. Is there a second?
Really?
All right, I'll second. Discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a lot of discussion on this bill, and as you know, we had discussion about a potential amendment that would do some things in rules, and in talking with the advocates, it seemed that there was not a consensus to move forward with that proposed approach in a potential amendment, so I think we're kind of where we are with it, and that's, you know, I think that's where we're at.
Further discussion. Senator Altshuler.
Yeah, why?
Why?
Yeah, why?
I can just speak for that.
Yeah,
Am I
please.
So this bill has come before the legislature for many years.
Yes,
And-
this was a Representative Rogers
Yes.
bill
she did.
many years
And
ago.
we've heard the same testimony many times over that this.
I'm kidding. God bless you.
It's all right, no worries. This just isn't a problem in New Hampshire. It hasn't been a problem in New Hampshire. There's very few vets that will even consider doing the process, and those that do are, they're very good in having the conversation with their clients about the potential problems that happen with declawing, and it isn't a New Hampshire issue, and it hasn't been a New Hampshire issue for many, many years. And I've had many conversations over the last 7 years now with members of the veterinary community, and there's the times that this even comes up as an option is typically around a necessary option for a medical purpose, not always. There's very, very few people that even do it anyway. There's no number that I can ever get somebody say we do 9 of these a year. There just isn't, that information isn't available, but I can tell you that in every conversation I've had, there's virtually no one that does it. And it's not even really being trained in the colleges anymore to the new vets that are coming along. So it's just not something we need, and it's not necessary to have it. So therefore, we're starting down a bad path, in my opinion, if we start telling animal owners what procedures they can have for veterinary care. There's valid cases where this may be necessary, and I'm confident that our veterinary community is doing a great job in educating the animal owners that if they are looking at doing that, all the things that they need to know. And so I'm comfortable that we don't need to legislate this.
Further discussion? Senator Waters, and then Senator also?
Do you have something?
After you.
So, and I appreciate Senator Pearl's, statement of his reasons, and, as you've heard from me on this bill and on other bills, that I do think that there is a real concern about how we're using the concept of ownership in terms of ethical treatment of animals, and certainly we have a lot of legislative history on things that are defined as cruelty, as preempting or abrogating notions of ownership, let alone the larger, philosophical and religious debates over our relationship with other creatures on the earth. And so I personally do consider this a form of cruelty, and that's why, I would have voted for the bill and tried to work to move it forward. But I understand where we're at. But I think that, I think that this is one of those issues that we're going to see a lot more public debate and evolution on it, and where we'll end up. I mean, it's hard to put philosophical or other kinds of beliefs into statute, huh?
It is.
Yeah. But I do think that we're going to continue these discussions, and I appreciate, again, Senator Pearl's and the folks who came here to testify, and I think it's illuminating as to where we're at on something that, really gets at people's rather deep ethical values. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. Senator Altshuler.
So we had 6-1 people coming, signing in support of passing this bill. And, I think that if there was, if we were to take out the word cats and put in dogs, I mean, people would be up in arms. That would be absolutely unacceptable. If we had put in, hoofs for horses, absolutely not. Who would even think of doing that, of cutting off an animal's feet at their taking off a knuckle? It is cruel. That it's just it. I don't know how you work around the gymnastics of saying it's not cruel to cut off an animal's knuckles. With an overwhelming amount of the public coming out and saying, yeah, we also think this is a cruel act and that we should not endorse this by leaving it open for discussion in New Hampshire. We heard with veracity from the public and from vet techs and vets that this is not okay. And that, we actually had people saying that, it's not, that if they work at a veterinarian practice where this is done, they are not able to remove themselves from the procedure. It's a matter of participating in their workplace. So I'm struggling a lot with the idea, particularly because we had testimony about, and very, very graphic and procedural information given to us, and references. If you went through some of the links that were sent to us from some online testimony, I do not see how we can allow for the space in our state for this to be a possibility. It's cruel. It's an animal cruelty issue. Yeah, so.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye?
Aye? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Guys have it?
Post.
Senator Pearl, would you like to take this one?
I will
as
take
well?
this one.
All right, I would like to do 281.
So I will move up to pass.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Did you second?
I will
No,
move
I just said which one, 281.
amendment, excuse me.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's the
I'll
second.
move amended 1657.
Is there a second? I will second.
I'm catching up.
I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Chairman, we've got some work to do on this, right? We've got a couple of little changes that we need to, that Bo's asked us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to get to my notes on the original copy I had, and I think Nick may have some indication too. Let me see if I can find the copy I had in front of me when we worked. So, I guess the key things are, as I recall, on line 11 to 12,
Yep.
that we changed the 378:37 to 378:38. Is that what?
Do you remember that?
Okay.
Yep.
And then that's in another place or two, is it? Or not?
Josh?
Good morning again. That's the only place in the bill. Representative Bose had made the comment that that statute is referenced other places in other statutes, and
Right.
that was the reason to
Yes.
retain that.
Yeah, and I was gonna mention that too, and it's like, this, taking that 37 out creates haywire throughout statutes, including a bill that the House just passed, the Senate bill that just passed, which references this as well, in terms of grid planning. So, and I'll note here, rather than only finally comment on the amendment, that the retention of this it will be very helpful in terms of getting concurrence in the House, I think.
I agree.
And I think also that it sets up, it retains an important principle in terms of a consideration of renewable resources, and that really is the policy of the state, has been for a couple of decades in the state energy plans and so on. So I think that this is it's not exactly a correction of an error, but it's a recognition of a principle that Representative Bose and others thought we needed to do. So that's on that. And I don't remember, were there any other little changes we need to? I'm sorry, I don't have that copy with me, so.
That's what I have, made the department?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, okay. So in both places on 29.
On
Page 2, make a report on line 2?
yeah, change the PUC as department.
3.
What line?
Line, yeah.
8?
Public Utilities Commission to read.
What line again? I'm sorry.
Line 2.
2?
Yep.
Okay.
Not
And
report.
change the Public Utilities Commission's website to the department's website.
Okay.
Page 4, was there?
I do not have any
Josh, no? Okay. Line 35, no, line 34, governing factor, wasn't that discussed? If not, that's fine.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Line 34 on page 4, something, I wrote governing factor. I don't know why I put that there, but,
I don't have any notes on
then,
that.
then let's not do it. Is there some,
Oh, on page
7,
8.
8? Committee? Instead of commission on line 33 and on line 35, instead of commission, it'll be committee. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what I have.
So just a second that again. So line 33 and line
35.
35
Where it says
is.
commission, it will be changed to committee.
Okay, thank you.
Was there anything else? I got little notes, but I don't think they were just a
I think
reminder.
that was it.
Yeah, no, those were the suggested corrections.
All right, with those changes, any further discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, or did you have something, Senator Altshuler?
I have two things, so I'll follow up with, maybe yours is one of mine.
Well, let's just, remember where we are with this, that we have gone through a long process of trying to do several things. Position of the Senate on municipal host was unanimous, and this, with some changes, ensures that our desire to expand municipal host, and really this can help so many communities that have the land to do a project but wouldn't have the offtake. And this now means they can work with communities around them within the same utility service area and do that. It also moves us forward on the SEC transformation, and as you know, I kind of started this ball rolling by suggesting to Representative Vose that with all the work we did, there might be a way forward this year to do some of this, and this is I think this is a good step that we're taking with that. I also, understand the desire of the governor and others to ensure that 281 pass, and do note that we have also incorporated House Bill 251 into this. And so in recognizing those as the, expressed desire of the governor as well as our House colleagues, that's why they're in here. And the repeal of the ILRCP has generated the most discussion in the hearing and so on. Mm-hmm. And I did want to mention that preservation of 37 is important. What we heard was, despite the fact that the board did not seem to have as much function or effectiveness as those who support renewable energy would wish, or support considering the environmental consequences of developing it, or of continuing with fossil fuel, the dire consequences of that on our health and so on, that's understood. And they perceive this as a loss. But I do think that there is a commitment within the Senate and within the House and both parties to consider some legislation next year to think about how we can meaningfully get at public participation and some of the issues that, we had, Don Crease had sent us an amendment to kind of resurrect the ILRCP and so on and so forth. And I finally thought that and also some consideration of what do we do with the Easy Board, because people had realized it had become kind of derelict because of what we did with House Bill 549 a couple of years ago. That might be considered as well. Are we having sufficient public input in place for conversations about the energy efficiency program? So I do think there's a commitment to work on it next year. I had thought maybe we could do a study committee, put it into this bill, but I realized that that'd be too rushed, and we need to think about this so we can have true bipartisan support moving forward on it. I do want to note publicly that in terms of the Easy Board, please do note what is in this bill about Easy Board functions, that there are some of the functions that were in the Easy Board legislation, which are now in statute, plus the funding. And I want to mention that in particular because it shows how far we have come. Remember on House Bill 549, that was kind of an emergency response to what was considered to be a misinterpretation or a misconstrual of the will of the legislature with energy efficiency programs. And that's why Representative Bowes and I came together to kind of rapidly do 549 in record time, get the legislature and signed by the governor so that that would be clear. And what came from that was a feeling that it is in the legislative function to create policy for the PUC to follow. And I think now we have completely closed that loop on the Easy Board and the energy efficiency program. So we can continue to debate how much money we ought to put into it, what we ought to do with it, and so on and so forth, but legislative intent and statutory inclusion is now here. And I think that also, you know, as people might want to jump around about, you know, getting rid of this, getting rid of that. Well, look, we haven't really gotten rid of it. We've strengthened it, I think, in this regard. In terms of putting the 251 in here, you know, that's also created some heartburn about, is that a way to somehow make people object to paying for helping their neighbors out? And I think it's been demonstrated now reducing transmission costs. And I personally think that it might actually encourage and develop more support for those programs, and people see how little of their bill is actually going to saving themselves money and helping their neighbors. So we'll see how that goes. So I think we, you know, Mr. Chairman, sorry to go on first, but I think that, you know, your amendment here creates a good compromise and also a really extraordinary way forward, because this amendment, though it is just 281, it is not unrelated to the passage of 54 in the House. It's not unrelated to what we're doing with 139. It's not unrelated to other efforts that are ongoing still about industrial host. And we have made, I think, extraordinary progress on these issues. And while there will be some difficulties, I think, of people who still have objections to 281, I think we have really provided something that can be seen as really meaningful move forward for. So that is to say that I'm in support.
Thank you.
Is that where you were going?
No, I really appreciate it.
What is he gonna add?
I appreciate all your work on this as well. But Senator Altschul, do you have some comments?
Yes, I appreciate like how complicated this package is, and I mean it's a great deal of melding of multiple pieces of policy, and I would ask if the committee would consider adding on the very end the effective date, line 30 of page 11, that the effective date of section 1 be effective July 1st of 2024, and the remainder effect 60 days after passage, to give us a little bit of time to buffer what has been suggested and what Senator Waters brought forward, that we are going to revisit how the integrated least cost resource plans, what their next iteration may be, because we, at a time when electric consumption is going up, we don't have anything as a backstop. We don't have a bumper. So would there be a consideration to give us that little tiny bit of space to put the effective date of part 1 as July 1, 2024, and the remainder of 281 effective 60 days after passage?
I would oppose that myself, but whatever the committee wants to do, we can entertain it. I feel that the amount of work that we went into this, having spoken with all parties, I don't want to jeopardize this bill, and so I would not support that.
So how would just delaying the effective date jeopardize the bill?
It
What
would
would,
have to do with other parties that are not here, that I just don't feel that, I'm not going to support it, so.
who are we talking about specifically about? Yeah,
Just
like,
all parties.
well, I'm a party, and
You
I'm,
are?
yeah. So this is, who are the other parties that we're talking about? Because we've heard from a number of
They're the ones.
stakeholders that, are very concerned that we are eliminating this, this is, bumpers on the, this is a guardrail. And, dangerously eliminating guardrails can be really problematic, particularly since they've helped us in the past. So, you've said who,
Yeah,
the parties, who are the parties? Like,
Maybe I can
yeah,
speak to that a little bit. Well, one party is the House of Representatives, which passed 281. And that is the position of the House. So that's what we have. And frankly, if these other things had been put on a different bill, 281 would have passed by now already and gone through the Senate floor. So I think that was one party. The other side of it is they, sense in putting this bill together from the Department of Energy was that it was important to make these kind of clean breaks because this was the desire of those who brought the bill forward, and that was going to be supported by the Department of Energy. And I mentioned earlier that I had put together a potential amendment for this that would have been a study, legislative study, that would have gone until, I guess, the usual November 1st, and then would have tried to put the repeal date for for the 281 to the end of the year, so that you would have the study report would come in, and there'd be time to file legislation, and repeal would take effect then. I'm not, looking at the schedule of which utility is supposed to come in to the board, into the ILRCP. I don't really think anybody's scheduled to come before it in the next quite a while, because they have recently done so. So keeping it going would not have any real effect, rather than the fact that it's still in statute. And also, I as I said earlier, we will have next legislative session to file a bill and to have more time to really think it through. So I'm not convinced that keeping this thing on, not even on life support, just kind of as a language and statute, really accomplishes anything. So I understand the sensitivities and feelings, but I also, I think it is very clear to me that if we want to be able to move forward with the municipal host and the other good things that we're doing, that this piece of it needs to be retained as it is in the bill. So maybe not happy with it, but that's other parties. I guess I've covered them.
And I made a commitment myself
Yeah.
to come up with legislation next session with all the parties, including Chris Helms and the former senator that came in to testify on that portion. And I always keep my word. So, but that's where I stand.
What's the motion?
So the motion is right now to pass as amended.
Well, we have to pass the amendment.
You pass the amendment.
The committee amendment.
We're doing OTP on the amendment.
So all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Further
I'll
discussion?
move on to pass as amended.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
I'll take it out. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate all your work on this, Senator Waters and my committee members, and thank you very much. Let's see. Is there any,
Didn't we do 142?
We did, I forgot.
Can I mention something about that while we're here?
yep,
That's why I don't.
So, as you know, there's been discussion, and I forgot there'd been discussion about potential amendments when we suddenly voted ought to pass, but as it turns out,
We're not gonna do this.
that is a good way to go. I think it's, there are some continuing discussions that need to be held on 142. what Burgess has asked is that they would like that issue of the timber resources and their use to be reported on by Eversource, and that could be a new duty of the timber board,
Okay.
which makes perfect sense. And I reached out to Representative Bixby, who is the prime sponsor of 221, which we haven't heard yet, about, which is a non-controversial bill. And, I mean, one might argue that doing the little timber board, one sentence that says the Eversource should report to them periodically on the biomass in the forests, that would, I mean, maybe it's germane, maybe it's not, but that we could put it on there, and then the Senate President could, you know, say, hearing no objection to the non-germane portion, we could pass it, and I believe it will have concurrence in the House.
Yeah, okay.
We have time to have that hearing, but I just wanted to mention it in that context, that that's the one little piece out there, and I think next year we'll have an opportunity to think more about if there are ways for Berlin to be able to take in that power without sending it back out and having it come more expensively back from the utility, but we'll see, so that's on that.
Further discussion on 142? I want to wait for Senator Bertzel to get back.
Well, we haven't, we already passed it,
Yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, it's on the floor. Right, but I just want to mention that, because that'll come up after, when we do 21.
All right, 385, relative to cumulative, okay, HB 385. For today.
Are there any amendments needed on this bill? I don't have any notes.
Is there a motion on it?
I'll make a motion if you want.
Hang on.
Just making sure we didn't need any amendments. I didn't remember, I don't have any notes that we did.
My only note that I put on here is yes.
Yes. There you go. Well, then I'll move on to pass.
We're on 385, and the motion is ought to pass by Senator Pearl. Is there a second?
Well, second.
Second by Senator Waters. Discussion.
So, this, you know, as Chairman Bowes explained to us, establishes a complaint process, or rules process, excuse me, and how to handle complaints.
Yeah.
And so on, and I think that it makes perfect sense to do this, and so there it is. That's what it does, it's established a complaint process.
Well, we like complaints, right? So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Consent?
Consent by Senator Bertzel. All in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
Senator Bertzel, would you like to take this one out?
Sure.
All right. Is there a motion to move out of exec? So move. All in favor of moving out of exec?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you all. Appreciate all your hard work.
So we'll hear the rest of the bills next week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We will. Good.
Are these the last of them?
Next week we have,
Or-
4, but they're not FMs or anything like that.
And 251 is just gonna go bye-bye, so.
Yeah.
Unless we want to retain her for some reason to put something else on.
Can, if you need.
I don't know, what's your sense of what's happening over there?
You want to hold on to something just in case, because I don't know why.